Yu, son of devoted priest Tetsu, learns he must commit true sins for his confessions to his father, which he commits via becoming a master of upskirt photography, promising his deceased mother that he will marry a girl like the Virgin Mary, a girl like Maria. Yu loses a bet with his gang of shoplifting upskirt photographers, dressing like Meikokaji from Female Prisoner Scorpion, and kiss a girl he likes, upon which he encounters Yoko, his Maria, the girl of his dreams, taking on a group of thugs paid by Aya, a manipulator and representative of a local cult, the Zero Church, intending to infiltrate Yu and Yoko's relationship for the intention of dissolving their ties and bringing them into the Zero Church cult. As Yoko becomes infatuated by the enigmatic woman who helped her in her fight, Yu introduces himself as Miss Scorpion, causing Yoko to question her sexuality. Things complicate when Yoko is gradually introduced into Yu's family as a new stepsister, when Tetsu plans to marry Yoko's mother, Kaori. The central three, Yu, Yoko and Aya, become entangled in a complex melodramatic screwball comedy of taboos, kinks, infiltration and abduction that reveals the contradictions and similarities between the perverse and organised religion. This is Sion Sono's 4-hour wild ride, Love Exposure, which causes comedy, theology, risque storytelling, and taboo drama to collide into a kinky, blasphemous, emotional young adult epic, equally absurd and ridiculous, yet engaging and believable, with Love Exposure dabbling with occult's influences reflecting Sion Sono's own personal experience within a cult at the age of 17. Incredibly difficult to summarise, with its mix of hyperactive violence, radical feminist approach to the battle of the sexes, and a criticism of the far-right religious restrictions on human urges such as sexuality and identity. Love Exposure encourages its characters Yu and Yoko to expose themselves to their truest urges of love, putting aside their differences and uniting together. Despite Love Exposure's daunting length, almost every scene feels necessary to developing the film's central characters, and very few scenes slow down the film's pacing. Moving at such a swift pace, it is surprisingly quick and easy to be engaged with Love Exposure. Elaborating on this, Gabe Toro, writing for IndieWire, discusses the film's length and its necessity for developing its characters, stating that, "What's delightful about such a length is the fact that not a moment drags, as we get to know everything about our wayward youths. Each one is given the respect of a lead character, which matters heavily if we are to take into account the melodramatic final hour, which converges on a cult. As such, every decision each character makes is given equal dramatic weight. Sono's film manages to treat its characters with respect despite their mostly absurd connections. When Gabe suggests that Sono's film treats its characters with respect, giving them equal dramatic weight, he's not wrong. The first 90 minutes is spent establishing the central trio of characters and their backstories and motivations, their relationships, experiences and traumas, making sure to only make light of disturbing traumas such as sexual abuse when the victim finally comes out on top, such as Aya's infamous penis snipping scene, in which she exacts revenge on her sexually abusive rapist father. Sion Sono's detail to these characters feels essential to understanding why they behave the way they do. Yoko hates men due to her experience with her abusive and neglectful father. Yu becomes the king of perverts due to his desperation to connect with his father, the only way he knows how, by committing sins he would confess to in church. While Love Exposure moves at a quick pace, it makes sure not to ignore the nuances and details within each character's motivations and backstories, quickly endearing the audience to characters who, within any other context, and within the hands of a lesser filmmaker, may simply be two-dimensional and despicable. Love Exposure is also an exploration of contradictions, tying the knots between Yu's perverse activities and exploration of sexuality between Yu and Yoko, with the religious fundamentalism of an organised cult, specifically shaming members for their sexual urges and curiosities. This is most prominent within the conflict between Yu's upskirt photography, an act viewed as perverse, and the religious infiltration of Aya into Yu's and Yoko's family, manipulating them towards the Zero Church, when Yu intends to deprogram Yoko from the influence of the Zero Church cult, bringing her to a secluded beach. In Yoko's attempt to escape, she confronts Yu's perversions, disgusted with him. While it must be difficult for Yu to redeem himself within the eyes of someone so disgusted by his actions, isn't it equally as perverse for a representative representative of an organised faith, Aya, to infiltrate and manipulate a family into a cult simply for her own benefit? Love Exposure contrasts the outwardly perverse, the upskirt photography, with the covertly perverse, organised religion, and demonstrates the impact of both on Yu and those closest to him. Yu's own difficulty to separate the perverse with genuine feelings of love provides another conflict, this time one that is personal and internal. Love Exposure echoes the sentiment of making one's heart, in the film's own crude words, erect. Yu's own journey not only takes him on a madcap intense struggle to free his family from the clutches of a dangerous cult, but also on a personal journey of learning the difference between lust and love, a sense of sexual awakening and maturity. Writing for the New York Times, Jeanette Katsuli discusses Love Exposure, reinforcing the film's exploration of sexual maturity by stating that, merging the sacred and the profane, the bloody and the batty, Love Exposure tunnels into serious topics, warped parenting, sexual intolerance, and the way religious cults enslave damaged souls, with a hilarious blasphemous shovel, exhibiting astonishing dexterity. Mr. Sono shapes all his trauma into a narrative that's completely coherent and surprisingly touching, never more so than in Yu's struggle towards sexual maturity. Jeanette's point suggests that Sion Sono's ability to explore complex topics, including dysfunctional parenting, for example when Tetsu beats Yu for the sins he commits, as well as religious sexual intolerance, such as when Kaori claims that being a lesbian is a sin, as Yoko begins to explore her own sexuality, believing herself to be a lesbian. With these elements funneling towards how these characters grow, Sion Sono gradually teaches his protagonist Yu about how love pierces through any other influence, liberating oneself from the religious restraints surrounding sexual desire, as well as liberating Yu's own understanding of love being something physical. Yu's maturation and struggle leads him to love, a love that transcends physicality. As Yu struggles to save his family, including Yoko, from the Zero Church headquarters, Yu brings attention to the church's practices by detonating a bomb, causing a news team to flock at the headquarters. Spending time within a psychiatric hospital, emotionally and psychologically vulnerable, Yoko visits Yu believing himself truly to be Miss Scorpion, and thanks him for his efforts in saving her, in which she attempts to return the favour, saving him. Dwelling on her desperate words, Yu gradually awakens, his heart and penis erect for Yoko, in which he runs to her as a final gesture of his love. Love Exposure's own equivalent to the stereotyped running through the airport motif often found within romantic comedies, except here it is running from the psychiatric hospital security. Their final encounter becomes the perfect gesture. All their struggles and difficulties could not hold back the love that has bloomed between the two. Yu sets aside his perversions, Yoko sets aside her fury, and the two connect in a way that feels satisfying after such an absurdist emotional rollercoaster. This ending serves somewhat as a coming-of-age conclusion. Both characters have learned and matured, bringing them closer than ever before. In conclusion, Sion Sono's Love Exposure is an exploration of sexual and romantic maturity, as well as a personal contrast and comparison between the openly perverse, from pornography to illegal upskirt photography, and the covertly perverse, organised religious representatives dividing communities and families for their own gain. While a daunting film for its length, it moves at a rollicking speed, retaining a respect for each of its characters and their traumas, never shying away from the truly ugly, yet also never losing its own sense of batshit style. Love Exposure is many things. It's cool, it's kinky, it's funny, and it's certainly emotional. Sion Sono has achieved something emotionally mature and equally taboo with Love Exposure that many filmmakers could never dare to achieve. A special thank you to my super Patreon supporter Gil.